Today I want to just talk for a sec about what we're trying to accomplish today. In my book, Find the Lost Dollars, I focus on 9 areas of your business where money gets lost. And so what I want to do today is look at some very specific things you can do in each of the 9 areas. So I want to focus in on a little bit more detail than we have before. This will be based on my working with lots of clients every day, trying to help them put these best practices in place. And I don't have time in an hour to get into tons of best practices, but I'm going to try to cover one key area in each of the 9 areas. And I think you'll see that we're going to get into some things we haven't talked about before. You have a worksheet where you're going to be able to evaluate your own business management practices. And for those of you who have scheduled calls, follow-up calls with me, that's what we're going to be talking about. Is we're going to be looking at your scores, trying to understand what's holding your company back from putting those practices in place, and hopefully I'll be able to give you some tips and ideas for how to take the next step. I'm going to challenge you at the end of today to write down a couple things on that worksheet that you want to focus on. And hopefully by filling out the worksheet and the scores, looking at your own scores, you'll be able to come up with some things that you think would be some great next steps. And you may not have all the answers for how to put things in place, but as long as you know what your next couple steps are, I feel like you can start to make progress. And committing to those ideas and figuring out those next steps is really where you have to go from here, from attending a webinar where you're getting some information and ideas to then actually taking some action. And our clients who can put many of these things in place can easily see a huge increase in their profit by the end of the year, 100,000 or more. There's no reason that you can't do that, because these best practices are designed to make things work better in your company. And then finally, we're going to talk about what your technical staff and your project managers need to learn to help you increase profits, and to learn these best practices, and how we're going to spend a few minutes at the end talking about how we teach these best practices to our clients, and some of our best practices that we use to actually get those people to change what they're doing every day. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. So quick bio for me. Again, I'm the author of Find the Lost Dollars, 6 Steps to Increase Profits in Architecture, Engineering, and Environmental Firms. I've dedicated my entire career to working with the AEC industry, have worked with over 700 firms in my life, and in recent years have focused specifically on helping companies increase profits. And I've worked with hundreds of firms, both with implementing Deltek software, in the early days, Win2 software, and also working one-on-one with companies to help them improve what they're doing every day. And I've found that when I work with a company, we can usually focus in on a 1 to 5% increase in revenue, and even a 1 to 5% increase in profit in some situations. There's many reasons why companies need to change their best practices, and what I found is that most of our clients come to us because they're looking to increase the value of their firm. So, the recession took a big hit on many companies. I'm trying to help them build their companies back, and also to be more competitive and build that value so they can retire someday, or transition to new leadership, or sell their business, or even, I hate to say it, but prepare for the next recession, because the stronger your company is, the more easily you're going to be able to prepare for times when business isn't as abundant as it is right now. I also find that many of our clients aren't happy with where they are right now. They have strategies to grow, get new clients, look at different geographies or different new markets they want to get into, and they need help with that. And a lot of that is based on getting rid of bad clients and getting more good clients. So we spend a lot of time working on that. And we focus a lot of time on scope creep, because that is where a lot of money is lost And I have found that we can help our clients save an average of $100,000 to $1 million from the money that is getting lost from out of scope, either client requests or out of scope situations where your own staff are going off the scope and not managing the scope properly. So that's what I do every day. And I'll just tell you a really quick story. When I started out in the early days, I was a very young CPA, and I started in the early 90s working with an architectural firm. And at that time, I really didn't know a lot about architecture and engineering firms. I had worked with a lot of different kinds of companies at that point, but I started working with an architecture firm. I helped them implement their Win2 system. And then I started helping them run their back office. I was helping them with their billing and their time management and their payroll and their financial statements and dealing with the bank and dealing with their subcontractors. And as you can imagine, they had a lot of engineering firms as subcontractors. And through that experience, I learned a lot. But one of the things I learned was that they were losing money on a lot of their projects. And it was very frustrating. And there were a lot of reasons for that. And one of the big reasons was that their employees, and even the other principals in the firm, in this particular firm, but they're also their employees and their technical staff, their project managers, did not really understand how the business made a living. And in fact, they didn't really want to know about it. They wanted to work on their projects. They enjoyed their technical skills and working on their projects and delivering beautiful architectural creations, and they really were not focused on money at all. And they had one partner in the firm who was focused on money, who I worked with to try to transform the rest of the organization. And unfortunately, back then, I didn't have the tools to be able to really help them do that. I didn't know what I was doing as much, back then. I was very young, and through the years and working with hundreds of firms, I have been able to slowly learn so many things that, if applied to your firm on a daily basis, can make a huge difference. I'm hoping to offer some of those things to you today. I'm in a much better place to be able to do that. And I also can really relate, because of that experience and also working with the clients, I can really relate to how the engineers feel when they're working with the architect. I really can see both sides and what goes on, and how each of you can work together better to help each other to be more successful. And I think that's something that maybe doesn't go on enough in the industry. So I'm hoping to offer you as much as I can. On your worksheet, there's a place for you to write down what you would do with 1 to 5% more profit. What would it mean to your firm? And if you're trying to make changes and implement best practices in your organization, you really need to be able to articulate to your staff the why. Why is it so important that we make more money? And if you're in an accounting role in your firm, or even if you're an owner or a principal, you may think that's an obvious question. But to your technical staff, it isn't an obvious question. They don't think about that really at all. They don't think about the profit or whether the company's making a profit. To them, a successful project does not necessarily mean a profitable project. A successful project to them might be a beautiful project, or one that you won an award, or one in which your client is very, very excited about, but not necessarily one that is profitable. So the more that you can articulate that, it's going to be the beginning stages of helping you actually implement a lot of the best practices. And again, execution is everything. If you can actually get these practices in place in your company, that's where you're going to see the biggest difference in your organization. So where is this lost money that we're talking about? And one of the big areas, and we talked about scope creep a minute ago, but one of the big areas that is where this money is going, it's the difference between what you budgeted for your project, that estimate that you did at the beginning, where maybe you said you wanted 12 or 13% on your project, and what you actually end up with. And when I do analysis with our clients of the difference between the budget and the actual, we see there's a big variance there. I call it the project profit variance. you should know what your project profit variance is on every project, because that's the lost money. And we're going to focus on those best practices today that are going to help you find that lost money or that lost project profit. So the best practices we're going to focus on today are going to help you increase 3 metrics in your organization. If you've read my book, you know that I'm very focused on measuring, because if you don't measure, you can't fix things. So, towards the end, we're going to talk about our 6 steps, and the 6 steps that I recommend in the book. And the first one of the 6 steps is to know your metrics, know your win rate. And sometimes this is the hardest one for a company to figure out, because many firms do not have good statistics that they manage about their proposals and what they won and what they lost and the dollar amounts, et cetera, regarding proposals. But the win rate is a direct measure of how successful you are at winning. And a 1% increase is a huge amount of money. Your utilization rate, and that is a measure of how well you use your resources, and your primary resource is your people and your subcontractors. But the utilization rate is showing you how well you're able to keep all those people working on billable, successful projects. And when I say successful, what I mean is, if you can't bill for your employees' time, or you have to write it off, then that's going to ultimately affect your profit. And then your project profit margin, and ultimately that is the ultimate measure of your success. That's showing how well you're managing your business and managing your projects. And so a 1% increase in your profit margin, so if you're a $10 million firm, a 1% increase is $100,000. And so knowing those numbers is very important. And I know you could all use an extra $100,000. And so we're going to look at how to improve in all 3 of these areas. So we're going to look at best practices in 9 areas. In my book, I go into a great level of detail about tons and tons of small things you can do in your business every day to increase profitability in these 9 areas. And today, usually when I'm working with clients, either coaching them or in our training program that we run, we focus on anywhere from, say, 10 to 20 best practices in each of the 9 areas. And today I'm going to focus on one specific thing in each of the 9 areas, and we're going to break it down into more detail, because I'm really trying to unpack some of these best practices for you and give you specifics about what you can do next. So for example, the first one we're going to talk about is sales practices. Many of you have seller doers. Seller doers are people who are usually technical staff, who have great technical skills. Some of them are project managers, and they are also expected to go out and help win work and bring business in the door. But they've never been trained as salespeople. Many of them think sales is a dirty word, and many of them have no idea how to approach a sales opportunity or manage that opportunity through to success. And so the best practice I wanted to share with you today about sales practices that can help your seller doers is for you to develop a well-defined and documented sales process. Now, this is just one of, as I said, 10 to 20 best practices that I focus on with our clients in the area of sales and managing opportunities. But I wanted to kind of break this down for you. And the reason is I go into clients every day and ask them about their sales process, and most of them look at me with deer in the headlight eyes. And that's because many firms do not think of it as a professional discipline. And if you look at a lot of big corporations out there, you look at your typical standard big, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 corporation, they have a sales organization. They have a whole part of their company dedicated to sales, and they have professional salespeople who are compensated based on sales success, they have sales managers, they have sales activities, they have sales reporting. So sales becomes a professional discipline. What I have found is that the architectural engineering industry has fought this. They've taken the view that our clients want to talk to our professional staff, our technical staff, when they're considering us for a project. And so a lot of that professional sales skills are never embraced and never kind of focused on. And I do have some clients that have had sales training for their staff, but really what's missing is the front end of that, which is your process. So I'm going to give you some tips for how to start looking at developing your own sales process. First of all, you need to just figure out where all the leads are coming in your company. So they could come in from a referral. They could come in from another client, you know, giving you a referral. They could come in from a subcontractor giving you a referral. They could come in from some other business partner that you have out in the world. They could come from an existing client. They could come from research that you're doing online and you find a project you want to bid on. It could be something you heard about. It could be somebody you met at a networking event. There's a lot of different sources of leads. So the first step is to break it down, figure out where all these leads come from and start to track that. And then what happens to those leads? So let's say you do go to a conference and you come back with business cards. What happens to that? Do your employees know what to do with those cards? Do you know what to do with them as far as putting them in your system? How do you code them? What are the fields in your CRM that get updated? What information are you tracking about your leads? And by the way, CRM stands for Client Relationship Management. It's a software system to track your outstanding opportunities. And a lot of the sales process has to do with how you use technology to be more efficient in following your sales through the sales process. Do you have a go, no-go process? Is that part of your sales process? In other words, at what point does a lead become an opportunity? At that point, how do you decide whether to bid on it or not? Most firms that do have a go, no-go, I find that they're not even following it. So that's a whole nother issue. So you should have things in place in your sales process to make sure that your employees are following the go, no-go, and you're reviewing this on a regular basis. And then what activities that you can do within your firm are going to lead to a higher win rate. And start to document that, put those best practices in place, and create a document and a training process to help your seller doers to be more successful. They don't know what to do. And so the more guidance and guidelines you can give them to professionalize what they're doing in this area is going to help increase that win rate. And a 1 or 2% increase in win rate is a lot of money. So on your worksheet that you have, I want you to look at how your company manages your sales process. And I want you to give yourself a score. And a score of 10 means you knock it out of the park. And a score of 0 is, or 1, I should say, it means you stink at it, or something in between. And be as honest as you can. Nobody else is going to see this worksheet except you, unless you want other people to see it. And this is to help you identify areas where your company may need to look at implementing some new practices. So go ahead and give yourself a score on sales process, how well your company manages opportunities through a sales process. So the next thing we're going to look at is proposal best practices. And what I find with many firms is, again, there's a lot of kind of disorganization when it comes to putting a proposal together. Many firms have trouble finding the employees' qualifications, the resumes, the project descriptions that they're looking for, identifying the right project, and just managing the large quantity of information that the company has about the qualifications. And so, again, I'm going to recommend that you create a proposal process. Now, the proposal process would, again, ensure that you're not moving forward with doing a proposal unless the go, no-go process has been analyzed and you've determined that you have a really good chance of winning the project. Because if you don't have a good chance of winning the project and you're wasting a lot of money on proposals that you can't win, and that's going to bring down your win rate. So number one, ensure the go, no-go is being followed. Organize, and so what you need to do in your proposal process is to put some safeguards in place in that process that, you know, somebody's going to review that go, no-go and make sure it's being followed. You're going to organize your project descriptions, resume, and boilerplate documents into a place where everybody can easily find them. And so your proposal process would explain how that's to be done and how your search criteria works. You want to automate this process as much as you can. The more manual processes you have in place, the more manual processes you have in place, the more you're going to slow things down and cause your people to waste a lot of time. And you're not going to be able to do as many proposals because you're going to be wasting time doing each proposal. So the more you can automate it and make it easy for your staff, the better. And so when you're looking at documenting your proposal process, look at each little step along the way. What is the workflow of efficiency for each step? What happens when we do this part of the proposal? What happens at this stage? Who's contributing to it? Very often I run into firms where the marketing department is having a hard time coordinating with the project managers who are helping write a lot of the technical aspects of the proposal. The marketing coordinators are putting everything together and they have a difficult time coordinating. So if you can improve that process of helping people work together, you're going to make your win rate, your proposal process and your win rate higher. And then also make sure you have adequate processes in place to proofread and approve proposals before they go out the door. I can't tell you how many times clients have told me they've been embarrassed because things went out that weren't of the highest quality. So by putting this well-defined and documented proposal process together, you're going to be able to, you're going to really streamline what people are doing. And another point I want to make, if you have multiple offices, the more consistent that you can make the terminology, the documentation, the processes, the way they use the systems, the more that you can put this process in place with all of your teams and get them doing things the same, it's going to make a huge difference in the overall efficiency and success of winning business. So the next thing we're going to talk about is estimating. And the reason this is so important, oh, and by the way, before I forget, give yourself a score on proposals. So a 1 to 10 score on how well you have a well-defined proposal process that is consistently applied across your teams and that you're following all of these best practices for putting proposals together. So, okay, now we can talk about estimating. So, estimating, I'm going to tell you right now, estimating is the key to a successful project. This is where it all starts. This is where you're defining the scope. You're figuring out how much it's going to cost. You're outlining in detail what's going to be done and providing an overall guideline for how the project is going to be executed and managed. And so a lot of thought and effort needs to go into the estimating process. But what I find with a lot of our clients is they tend to rush through this process because they're in a hurry to get the proposal done and maybe skipping some steps along the way. So what I have found has been very effective in helping our clients to do this, to improve their estimating, is to create a checklist. So again, I have 10 to 20 best practices I put in place for for preparing great estimates and accurate estimates. But this is one of the keys to making sure the project is going to be successful. So your checklist, first of all, needs to have what questions do we want to ask our client up front? And the more that you can work on this and put this together for your staff and your project managers and others who are developing the estimate, the better, because they may forget to ask certain questions and they may be guessing about what your client's expectations and requirements are. And then you and I both, we all know that when you guess, you know, it's not always right, and that's going to create conflict and scope creep and all kinds of problems later on. You also should give them some guidance about, you know, how to put an estimate together. So the checklist should include what rates to use, with how to develop a work breakdown structure. You might have some templates, either spreadsheets, or you might have project templates in your project management software that they can use to copy and use as a guideline for their estimate. So, you know, in your estimating checklist, make sure you're showing them how to use all of that. Explain in your checklist how to calculate for contingencies, how many meetings you're going to have in your project, and what an approval process needs to look like in order to get an estimate approved before it goes out the door. And I have found that, you know, just having an extra set of eyes looking at an estimate is very, very valuable. So give yourself a score, your company a score, how well you do at providing the guidelines for your project managers and others to put an estimate together, that they have some kind of documentation like a checklist to guide them through the estimating process and help them ensure that they're putting their estimates together as effectively as possible. So give yourself a score 1 to 10, and we will move to the next area, which is a big one, scope creep. So scope creep, by far, across the board with all of our clients, is the biggest problem that they face. And there are many, many reasons for it. It really goes back to what we were just talking about and how well they understand the client's requirements, how well they put the estimate and proposal together to outline what's included in the scope, how well they, I have an elaborate 10-step scope creep process, but right now I'm just going to be focusing on a couple things that you can do right away that is going to help control scope creep. So create kind of like a scope creep extra services request process. And so first of all, give your people the language that they need to effectively discuss change requests. And I find that's a big missing gap for a lot of your technical people. And when a client asks for something, they don't know what to say. And so what I do with our clients is we teach them what to say. We teach the guys what to say and how to respond to different types of requests in a way that is not confrontational, it's easy to say, and easily sets the expectations of the client that they're going to have to pay for any out-of-scope requests. And we do role-playing and other things like that. We create forms for client approval. So client approval should always be in writing, but very often a client, you know, will ask you for something and you just get on it right away and don't get that approval. It's very hard to get it billed and paid if you don't get its approval in writing. So create the forms and put that in your process. Define how to provide the quotes to your client. So do you want your guys to say, okay, that'll be about $5,000, is that okay? Or do you want them to take the time to say to the client, okay, let me make sure I really understand what you want. Let's sit down and go through what that would look like and make sure we're both on the same page before I give you a price. And that's the step that's often missing in many of these conversations. So, how do you want them to do that? How do you want them to give a quote? What steps do you want them to take to provide a quote for extra services? Again, make sure all approvals in writing. Next may be an email. It might be an actual work order that you want them to sign. Make sure you have the steps in place to teach your people how to track their time for extra services. You may need to set up separate billing codes for that, and how you're going to bill it. And then, again, train your people how to follow this process and how to do some role playing. And one of the things, just another little tip, one of the things I find in many firms when I go in is they'll say, yeah, well, we have this process. But when I go and talk to the employees, or when I run our business assessment survey with the staff to find out what they know about scope creep, I find out that they don't even know there's a process. So while your company might have a process, very often your people don't actually know what it is. So go ahead and give yourself a score for scope creep and how well you have documented a process for managing extra service requests, and that your employees know how to follow this process, and that they're well versed in it. So go ahead, give yourself a score 1 to 10. So the next area we're going to look at is project management. And again, I can spend on each of these topics hours and hours talking about each of these topics, but I'm just trying to hone in on, a couple things you can do in each area that are going to make a big difference. And I have found in the area of project management, what seems to be lacking the most is that many of your project managers don't understand how a project is profitable. They don't understand how the business runs. They don't understand accounting. They don't understand financial management. They don't understand the relationship between overhead utilization and profitability. They don't understand contract types and all of the reasons why you might or might not want a certain type of contract. They don't understand a lot of the terminology that's being thrown at them by the accounting department or on the reports that they're getting. In many cases, they're not getting the right information every week or month, and they don't have reporting at the right level. What I wanted to focus on today is how you can get your project managers to the next level. So what I have found is the number one thing you can do is to train your project managers on business management. How does the business make a living? And why is this so important? How does money get lost on your projects? How money is made on your projects? They need to know the financial terminology. They need to understand the metrics that you're measuring both the company and the projects on, and them as an individual manager. I was actually sitting in a meeting the other day, and during our Find the Lost Dollars training program, and we have kind of a round table where the different managers get to ask questions. And one of the younger project managers said, I have no idea how my performance is being measured. And that may seem surprising, but I've actually found it's very common in many firms. And sometimes they get reports and they don't even understand the reports they're getting. And if you think about how some of your project managers became project managers, there wasn't an official kind of, oh, you've reached a certain level of efficiency in project management, so now you're getting this new role. It's basically kind of learn by the seat of your pants. I like to call it the school of hard knocks. And I believe that taking a more intentional approach to transforming your project managers can have a major effect on their ability to control the project costs. They need to understand contract types. Why is a T&M better or worse than a lump sum? They may think one is better than the other when in fact it isn't. They may not understand the true essence of project costs. How does overhead get calculated? How does utilization affect overhead and profitability? How to develop project budgets, how to monitor spending on their project. These are all things that, if you're an accounting professional, are very obvious to you, but if you're a project management professional, these are things that need to be taught to you. And so that's what I specialize most of my time doing, is teaching project managers these types of skills, because I have found it can make a transformational difference in the business. So a best practice for you would be to ensure that your project managers are at their top level of business expertise, and you're turning them into a business manager. So go ahead and give yourself a score at your training programs that you have in place in your company, and also your project manager's knowledge and skill level around managing business and financial areas. Give yourself a score of 1 to 10. So the next area we're going to talk about is resource management. And this is such a critical area. As you can see from the picture, the last thing we want is one of our people sitting on the bench, meaning they have no billable work to do. But it happens sometimes. You know, work comes in, and the work isn't always evenly distributed day to day or week to week. And so some weeks they may have too much work, and other weeks they may not have enough work. And the more that you can even that out amongst your staff, as well as understanding how many people you need at any given time so that you can make necessary adjustments, whether that's either laying people off, hopefully not. It may mean that you have to bring more work in the door. It may mean that you need to hire people, because being able to look out into the future and see that you don't have enough people to do the work that you have. So being able to manage this is very, very difficult. And the more tools that you can put in place to give yourself an advantage in this area, it's going to really help you maximize that utilization of your key resources and ensure that your people aren't sitting around with no work to do. So the number one best practice that I can recommend to you in the area of resource management is to implement a scheduling system. A scheduling system would mean that you have a scheduling software package that allows you to look at all of your projects and your people and see where people may be over or underutilized into the future. The further into the future that you can get, the better, because that's going to help you be able to make better business decisions. If you can see 3 to 6 months out, based on the projects that you have in place in your backlog and the projects that you expect to come in the door, which are your opportunities, the more that you can look at that and realistically put hours to each of your people or each of your roles of people to be able to see what's really going on, it's going to give you a huge advantage. And if you're doing it kind of on a weekly, fly-by-the-night type of method, the firms that I see that do not have good scheduling software are kind of winging it every week. So they meet every Monday. Okay, who's busy? Who's not busy? Let's move these people around. It gets very confusing to your staff, and it doesn't maximize your ability to cross-sell across your group. I shouldn't have said cross-sell. What I mean is to be able to utilize your staff across your organization, across your different teams, and being able to move people around easily, and being able to share resources among different offices if you have them, and make sure everybody's got enough work. The other thing that I will tell you is another best practice as far as software, and the reason that many companies don't have good scheduling systems is because they think it's too hard to manage. And so I find that if you have 1 or 2 really good admin people who are really, really good at helping support the project managers in this area, it can make a big difference towards them being able to keep the data up to date. And it really needs to be updated on a weekly basis. So give yourself a score of 1 to 10, that you're utilizing an effective scheduling software system, you're planning into the future, you're reviewing it on a weekly basis and updating the schedule, and that you are effectively utilizing administrative staff to help improve your managers and give them the support they need to maintain these the schedule. Give yourself a score of 1 to 10 in this area. So the next area we're going to talk about is your billing cycle and cash flow. Oh, and that's wrong at the top. So it should say improve cash flow. So if your company is not getting paid fast enough, that means that your owners of your company are financing your payroll. So what does that mean? Every week your employees work, they get their paycheck, but your clients aren't paying for sometimes 90 or 120 days after the work gets done. And so your owners have to finance that. And sometimes if they don't have the cash flow to finance that, they have to go out to a bank and borrow the money. And that affects your profitability, because then you're using money to finance cash flow instead of using that money to invest in the business. I have found that the #1 thing that can improve cash flow is improved timesheet policies. So your best practice to improve your cash flow is to implement better timesheet policies and enforce these timesheet policies. So #1, create a written timesheet policy and make sure all your staff know how it works. They know what to do in various situations. In other words, you've really explained all the ins and outs of what to do if they're out of the office, what to do if they have overtime, what to do if they're not sure where to charge their time. Make sure when you onboard new staff that they are understanding these policies. The #1 thing you can do to improve cash flow, excuse me, is to implement daily timesheets, which will automatically increase timesheet accuracy. Because I'll ask you this question: how many of you can remember what you did last Friday in 15-minute increments? And if any of you raise your hand, then I'm not going to actually think that's possible, of course, unless you wrote it down. And your employees can't either. If they're waiting till every Friday to write down their timesheet for the week, they're guessing. So implement daily timesheets. It will dramatically increase your timesheet accuracy. And there's a lot of other things you can do to help improve timesheet accuracy in your company. And the reason this improves cash flow is #1, it gets your bills out faster because you don't have to spend a lot of time at the end of the month correcting your timesheets and moving time around to the correct projects and phases. But the other reason is if a bill goes out the door with the wrong information on it, you've given your client a perfectly good reason not to pay you. And so increasing timesheet accuracy is going to make a big difference in getting your client to pay faster or reducing the amount of excuses they have. And then hold your employees accountable. Don't let them off the hook if they don't do their timesheets. Doing their timesheet is as important to your company as them showing up for work every day. It really, really is. And there are a lot of other best practices around improving cash flow that have to do with collections and client relationships and various other things, which I cover in depth in my book and in the training program. But this is just one of the key items. If you can nail this down, you're going to really reduce your billing cycle and help improve cash flow. So give yourself a score on how well your company manages the timesheet process according to all these criteria: daily timesheets, onboarding people, making sure everyone knows the process, and holding them accountable, and highly accurate timesheets. So the next best practice I want to talk about has to do with systems. And I have over 25 years working in the area of systems. And what I saw on a regular basis is that I would go into a company and they would be all upset because their people weren't using the system. And there were a lot of reasons for this. I gave a whole 1-hour presentation on user adoptions for systems at the Deltec Insight Conference a few years ago because it's such a huge problem. And many firms complain, we invested all this money in this great system and nobody uses it. We can't get people to do their timesheets sometime. We can't get them to fill out opportunities in the CRM. We can't get them to keep things updated. And there are a lot of best practices that you can put in place to improve user adoption. Some of them are at the corporate level and just improving the overall way that the system works. And some of them have to do with how you work with your employees. So my best practice is to focus on user adoption in your system. And again, there's 20 or more best practices I have around not just user adoption, but how to improve systems in your firm. I just want to focus right now on user adoption, because if you can get your employees to use your system more, you're going to improve overall use of systems throughout the company and make people more efficient. So number one, look for areas to reduce redundant data sources. If your employees have to enter data in more than one place, they're going to start having a really good excuse for not using it. They're going to say, this is cumbersome, this is too much work, it takes too long. So try to get rid of those things that they can complain about. Perform a spreadsheet audit, because what I find is the reason that people aren't using the system is because they're decided that their way is better than the company's way. And so they go off and start creating spreadsheets. And if you allow them to do that, in other words, you've asked them for a report, but allowing them to produce a spreadsheet that really is stuff that could come straight out of your system, but they're choosing not to use it, then that's a huge problem. So go out and look and find out all the spreadsheets that are out there and see where you can eliminate as many of them as possible and get that information out of your system. That's going to improve your overall adoption of your system in the company. If you move systems to the cloud, what that means is taking a system that's currently just available on your server and making it available on the internet, then your employees can access it from more locations. And then they're more likely to use it and keep it updated on a timely basis. Train employees how to use it. I can't tell you how many times a client will tell me, oh yeah, we've trained everybody on how to use our CRM or how to do things, but they've given them a half-day training course, and 3 years later, after 12 updates, they think their employees still understand how to use that, and very often they don't. In many cases, never really learned it to begin with. So being able to survey your employees, figure out what they know and what they don't know is very important, and that can help you identify areas where you can improve your system. Review your system usage. And what that means is, in order to hold people accountable for using your system, you need to know whether they're using it or not. And in order to do that, you have to review on a regular basis who's doing what. And there are ways within your system, and most likely to figure that out, and then start calling people on it and start investigating why they're not using it if they're not. And also positively recognize people who are. And there should be consequences for non-compliance. I don't have time to list a whole bunch of consequences out, but an example is if you don't do your timesheet every day, you're going to get taken off of direct deposit for payroll. There are hundreds of things that I've seen clients put in place as consequences that can affect your employees' behavior and get them to use your system more effectively, and that's going to overall improve your business tremendously. So give yourself a score on how well you expect, train, and require your people to use your systems, and how much focus you put in your company on user adoption and helping your employees to use the system as much as possible. So give yourself a score of 1 to 10. So the last ninth area is client relationships. And this is really a focus on your existing clients. Your clients who are your lifeblood of your company. And many of us say we want great client relationships, and we have great client relationships, but in many cases, there isn't an intentional effort to try to focus on our very best clients, because your best clients, you know, I'm a big believer in the 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule says that 80% of your profits are going to come from 20% of your clients. And I think if you do some in-depth analysis, you'll see that's the case. So my recommendation or best practice is to focus on your best clients. Number one, know who your ideal client is. And just by going and figuring out your clients, categorize them into A, B, and C, and then go look at all your 8 clients, and those are probably your ideal clients. Figure out what they have in common. there's certain attributes that you want to look for in a great client. I believe that most firms could fire their C, D, E, and F clients and probably be way more profitable. And you can maybe in some cases convert your B clients to A clients. There are ways to do that. I recommend to fire your bad clients. So if you have a client that's a C or below, seriously consider why you have that client and whether it makes sense to get rid of them. Those may be clients that you're actually losing money on. And then my biggest recommendation to focus on your best clients is to develop a client retention plan. So for every one of your A clients, sit down and develop a detailed plan. You might want to do this on a custom basis. For each client, create a special custom retention plan of how you want to boost that relationship. So asking them for feedback, meeting with them face to face, sitting down and discussing them. What's it like to work with us? I have really dozens and dozens of best practices that I go over in the book and in the training program. But what why this is different than what you may be doing now is that it's a very intentional program focused on your very best clients. Because if you think about it, you may be treating your C clients the same way you treat your A clients. And that doesn't really make sense. And so my best practice really is to really, really focus like crazy on your best clients, your A clients. What else can your firm do to not only strengthen the relationship, but get more work out of those A clients? And I think you'll even find that your A clients will refer more business to you than any other clients will, and especially act as a positive reference. So give yourself a score on how well your firm focuses on your best clients. You know who your best clients are. You know who your ideal client is. You refuse to work with bad clients. And you have intentional client retention plans in place for your very best clients. So give yourself a score of 1 to 10 in that area. So now that you've finished that, there's one other line item there, and that is for leadership. And the reason that I have that there is because the number one thing that holds our clients back from being able to implement new best practices is their commitment of their leaders to continuously improve the organization. These best practices are not all going to get implemented in one day or 1 month or even in 1 year. It's a continuous evolution process of continuously getting better. You can continuously improve your processes. Your sales process can always get better. Your estimating can continuously get better. You can continuously come up with new ideas. But it has to be a focus of leadership and a value of your firm to focus on that. And so give yourself a score of 1 to 10 for how much your leadership is focused on continuous improvement and providing the resources, both the time and the money and the effort to implement new best practices that are going to make a difference in the organization. So give yourself a score of 1 to 10 on your leadership commitment. So I want you to add up your scores right now and figure out which of these categories that you're in. And 10 to 25, I mean, there's a lot of money to find in your organization. If you are not over a 25 in your best practices, there's great news. There's a lot of money you can find. I estimate at least $500,000 in your business. And in most firms that we work with, it's $500,000 a year. Now, it might be a lot more than that. If you have a large organization, you have very high revenue, it could be a lot more money, and that's why it says $500,000 plus. If your score is 26 to 50, it could be $400,000 or more. 51 to 75, you're not doing too bad. You're on your way. You've got some good practices in place, but you can still continue to make them better. 300,000 or more. 76 to 90, you're doing very well, probably above average. but there's still money to find. The clients I work with that are 76 to 90 still have some improvements that they can make, that they're losing money, and there's definitely money to find. And then 91 to 100 is what I call a gold star company. And even a gold star company can continuously improve, can find better ways and new ideas for improving their business, many of which can come from your employees. But you're still probably better than almost all other companies. You're in that top 10% and better than most companies. But I don't want you to take your eye off the prize that you can still continuously improve, and there is still money to find. So figure out where you are in there, and then you can get an idea. If you're in that 300,000 range, okay, where are we going to find that $300,000? What can we do? What should we do next to find that 300,000? Well, what I want to do is kind of take you through an evolution of how we help clients find the lost dollars. And in my book, I outline the 6 steps. This is a little bit different, 6 steps. I kind of revised this a little bit to take into account the work we've been doing with our clients lately and how we've been able to really get them focused in and honed in on improving their best practices. So the number one thing, which you can do right now, you can go, and we actually have a calculator on our website, which Leanne is going to be sending you an email after this webinar, and she can include a link to the Find the Lost Dollars calculator if you want to go in there and calculate your own metrics. And if you do have a meeting scheduled with me after this webinar, go ahead and use that calculator and figure out what your metrics are so we can talk about setting some goals for your company. The next thing that we do is we assess the business. Now, you can do this yourself by going around and trying to figure out what's going on in your company and all of the 9 areas of your business. We offer a business management assessment tool, which I'll talk about in a minute, but I've found a way to automate it to be able to survey a large number of employees very quickly in 27 different dynamics of the business. Basically, it's each of those 9 areas broken down to people, process, and systems. And we're able to very quickly provide you with scores, just like what you did just now, but we're getting it from the perspective of your employees. Because very often you don't know what's really going on every day. And so we help you figure that out by running this survey against what your employees' perceptions are about what's going on. Very valuable, provides a great amount of insight as to what your employees think is going on every day. And then the third thing we focus on is how to get your leadership consensus and having your leadership really communicate with your staff about the importance of profitability, focusing on changing your culture, and getting your staff to commit to improving their everyday behavior and practices. The fourth thing that we do is training mostly project managers, but also other technical staff in 10 business management topics. And I'll talk about that in a minute. That's something that we've developed based on the Find the Lost Dollars book. And again, in each of those 10 courses that we offer, there are about 20 to 40 best practices that we discuss and train on and start focusing very much on behavior changes. And then we do group meetings with coaching and facilitation. Now, that would be either with a coach or facilitator within your firm, or sometimes we help our clients and do it with them. It doesn't have to be something we do, but what we have found is that teaching somebody something doesn't necessarily change their behavior. In order to change their behavior, you have to reinforce that specific behavior changes, and then meeting as a group, getting people involved in helping solve problems very much makes a big difference in their motivation to try to help the company be more profitable. And then the last thing you need to do is to implement a lot of these best practices that we're talking about. And we feel that by training your people and then getting them to help you implement those changes, you're going to get more buy-in, you're going to get more positive attitude, You're going to get more adoption for new policies and practices, and they're really going to understand very much why these are so important. And they're going to understand how you're measuring it and whether it's successful or not. So that's kind of our 6 steps to finding these lost dollars. And let me just give you an idea how it works. We run the business management assessment. Again, it's a survey you send out to your people, and it grades you as either green, yellow, or red. We all know what that means. Green means you're doing great. Yellow needs some work, and red is it needs a lot of attention. It might be an area that there's a lot of problems with. And it gives your employees an anonymous ability to provide feedback, valuable ideas and feedback. And it gives you a nice report that your executives can review, your leadership can review, and determine how to prioritize areas to focus on with the best practices. So it's kind of like what you just did with the worksheet, but it's more elaborate and goes into a lot more detail and focuses on the 9 areas at a much deeper and detailed level. And then what we do is we run a 10-week program. So in the first 2 weeks, your people are learning why the culture in your firm, the values that they hold, affect profitability. Things like focusing on the quality of a project and keeping a client happy, and how that can cause you to give away things for free and cause scope creep. It focuses on where money gets lost in the business in these 9 areas that we just talked about, how much a 1% increase would be, and helping them understand why it's so important to focus on being a profitable company and what's in it for them as well. I think it's very, very important. They need to understand what's in it for them. So in those first 2 weeks, we're really building a foundation of a fundamental understanding of the business and what over at a high level, what goes into making the business run properly and what a 1% increase would look like. And then in the weeks 3 and 4, we teach them elaborate business skills that they've never been able to get anywhere else. We teach them about metrics and accounting terminology, about contracts and estimating, about all the best practices about how your company makes a living. And then in week 4, we focus on marketing, business development, and sales. All the best practices about winning new work, picking the right projects, managing opportunities through the sales process, understanding your pipeline, and understanding what a win rate is and how to improve that win rate. And then in weeks 5 and 6, we focus on real deep project management best practices, contract types, why different contract types are better than others, project costs, what goes into a project, labor, expenses, subcontractor costs, overhead, excuse me, estimating, and all the estimating best practices. Today we talked about an estimating process, but in the course we talk about all of the important things that they need to know to make sure an estimate has everything in it to ensure that the project's going to be successful. Project budgeting and resource management, how to stay on top of your project budget, how to schedule your people into the future, and the value of an hour of someone's work, which many of them don't realize that, but if one employee has, if you can save them an hour a week over a year, it's a ton of money. If you can save each of your employees 10 minutes a week, it can be $250,000 or more in increased revenue. And then in weeks 7 and 8, we go into the causes of scope creep, how it happens, and all the way through the project life cycle, all the little things that they can do on a daily basis that are going to keep scope creep from happening, and how to keep them really focused on scope creep, feeling comfortable about those conversations with clients, and why it's so important that you get approval for extra services and get paid for that work. And then time is money. We talk about why timesheets are so important to your organization and how time is such a critical management tool for the company. And, you know, many of your employees really believe that the timesheet is a compliance tool, but it's not. It's a business management tool, really understanding all the best practices around time management. And then in weeks 9 and 10, they learn about cash flow, how to shorten the billing cycle, how to improve employees charging on projects and the correct projects, how to get the bills out faster, and how to focus on getting paid and collection best practices. And then we wrap it up in week 10 with an in-depth understanding of how to improve client relationships with your best clients, how to understand who your best clients are, getting feedback from clients, understanding client retention plans, and really improving that relationship with the client and getting more work from your existing clients on a regular basis. And also just making sure clients are as happy as they can be. That's always a very important goal. So that's how we do that. And we find that by the end of those 10 weeks, with both an online course, that's how we offer it, as 10 online sessions plus 10 group training and facilitation meetings, so that you can take our material and the content from my book, Final Lost Dollars. You can teach them, but you can also start to get them to change what they're doing every day, and you can actually get them to start changing their behavior and what they actually do in their job every day. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where you're going to be able to put these best practices in place when your people understand why they're important, when they understand how to do them, and when they understand what to do. And we provide all of that, as well as having those meetings every week helps you take that content and make it your own. Talk about how it affects your company, what's going on in your business. And we find at the end of the 10-week program, most of our clients have 40 to 60 new action items, new best practices that came from their employees, recommendations from their team. And your team are much more likely to be successful and help you implement those best practices when they believe that they're their ideas, when they agree with them, and when it came from themselves. We all know what happens when we keep doing the same thing over and over. We really don't get any different results. So what I want you to focus on now is how you can take everything we talked about today, go back to your company, and really make a difference. And so what I want you to do, and write on your worksheet, I want you to write down 3 things of value you took away from this presentation. 3 specific things that you took away. If you're going to have a meeting with me in the next week to go over your worksheet, I'm going to ask you what those 3 things are. So make sure you write down what are those 3 things of value that you took away. And I want you to commit to just one next step. One thing that you're going to do when you leave this webinar today. Just one thing you can start, just one small next step that you can do, that you're committing to do. Because again, nothing happens until you take action. Now, for those of you who are interested in the 10-week program that I just talked about, we do have a special offer for you. It's 10 one-hour online courses. They're implemented in licenses for your people. We do recommend you do it in a group with a set schedule. We can provide some coaching for you if that's something you're interested in. And what you'll find is it's made up of videos, exercises, games, animation. It has a little pre and post assessment, and it also has the ability for your employees to set their own goals within the system and keep track of their own areas that they'd like to improve themselves. And when implemented with our recommendations, we have seen tremendous success and improvement in profitability. One of our clients, Hillman Consulting, they put their entire company through our training program in 2015, and within a year saw a 30% increase in profit. In just one of their divisions, in just 8 months, went from 2% profit to 20.87% profit. That was a $200,000 increase in 8 months. And that was from doing two things. One was putting their people through this program, and number two was implementing the best practices that came out of both the training and the program that as recommended by their people. And by doing both of those things, within 1 year, we were able to completely turn around their project profitability. And the exciting thing is their employees are still looking for ways to get better and improve, and it's a never-ending thing. It's a mindset, and it's a way of changing your culture so that your employees start to feel like it's their responsibility to help your company to be more profitable. So if you are interested in looking into our training, we're happy to meet with you and talk to you about it, show you what it looks like. We are offering a 15% discount for webinar attendees for 1 week only. And I'm committed to helping at least 15 firms improve their profitability at a huge amount this year. And I do measure it, by the way, and I do hold a 100% money back guarantee that you will see significant profitability increases. But I can only personally work with so many clients per year. So if you feel that this is something you're interested in and that you would want me to help you implement it in your firm, I don't have that many spaces left right now to get to do that, but because I'm already working with 3 or 4 firms right now, and my schedule's getting pretty busy. But I would like to talk to you about it, see if it makes sense, and as well as some of the partners that we have helping us implement as well. We have some really great partners in different parts of the country that are helping our clients implement this program as well, and they're seeing great success as well. So let us know if that's something you'd like to do. Leanne is going to be sending you an email. In that email, you will have the calculator. You will have a link to the recording of the webinar. So if there's anyone else in your firm that might want to see it, you can let them see it. And there'll be more information about how to learn more about our training program and see if it makes sense for your company. And it may not. It's not for everyone. We prefer to work actually with firms that are already very successful but want to be more successful and are also very, very committed to improving their business and improving their best practices. So I'm very excited to have you all here today. I would love to hear from you. For those of you who still think you might want to have a meeting with me and you haven't scheduled it yet, reach out to me and email me, and I will try to see if we can get you in my schedule next week. I've had quite a few of you schedule those meetings, but I want to meet with as many of you as possible. We will review your worksheet. We'll talk about what's going on in your company, and I promise I will try to help you come up with a few ideas of how you can move forward as quickly as possible in getting some of those practices implemented in your business.